Is this the reading room?
Yes, I'm Saad Manzoor.
And I'm Travis Howard.
This is Reading Room Talk. Thank you for pressing play. Welcome.
And welcome back, everybody.
Oh, yeah, we're radiologists. We have special suites. But there's another type of doctor in the hospital that's even more important than us. The GI doctors. They have a special type of suite. And we're here with Dr. Adjoa Anyane-Yeboa. How are you today?
I am awesome. Excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for making the time. I feel like, we talk to a lot of GI docs, but not like this. So we appreciate you making the time to talk to us.
For sure.
Awesome.
We know you're busy doing some wonderful things.
Yes.
Doing some wonderful things, in the academic world, in the community. We want to hear about all of that.
Yes, we do.
You, for sure.
And before we get into all that, though, we have to ask you, take us back to medical school. What would you say was your toughest class or rotation in medical school?
Ooh, that is a tricky question. I would say probably gross anatomy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, definitely gross anatomy for two reasons. First reason is that I'm actually not good at memorizing things. Like to this day, I can't memorize things. Like I just can't. So I felt like it required a lot of memorization.
It was all memorization.
It was all memorization.
That's it.
You can't memorize. Woof, it's a challenge.
It's a little brutal. It can be brutal. So much stuff to do. And let me, we've had this answer before. So let me ask you: did you actually dissect, or did you kind of just go through the pro sections with people?
So I dissected, so it's like I'll never forget dissecting the hands. For some reason, the hands felt like the most human to me.
It's very human. It's so human.
I don't know why, but definitely gross anatomy for sure.
Oh yeah, no, I can.
So,
yeah.
Adjoa, you obviously been a stellar student, and you're bona fide wonderful physician. How do you overcome how do you figure out how to memorize things, how to retain all that information?
Yeah.
Volume.
And not feel good about your memorization skills.
It's so funny. I just figured out a way that works for me. So if I write something down, then I'll remember it.
Oh, yes. I did the same thing. I did the exact same thing in med school. It's the only way to...
It's the only way. So I
over and over again.
All my notes. And for the boards, I rewrote the whole book.
Yes.
And that locked it in.
That's how you do it.
Yeah.
That's how you do it. Some people are visual, they can see it, but for me, I had to write it down just like you, just to and then when you review the notes, it just came back more natural because it was in your own handwriting. So
and then I could remember where certain things were on the page. So during the exam, I wrote it on that line in that color.
Oh, that's an awesome trick. It's an awesome trick. I love that. That's so cool. So take us back to tell us, where are you from and how did you get in?
Yeah. So I'm from New York, born and raised. My parents were both born and raised in Ghana.
Very
I'm
cool.
way back. I'm third of four, letting you know all about me. And so I actually wanted to do something in politics or in law when I was in high school. In high school, I shadowed my local assemblywoman for one of my classes. And I realized that it was a lot of reading. And again, I can't memorize well. A lot of reading, a lot of remembering bills, but it wasn't really a lot of people and interacting with people and getting to know them. And so I figured out that wasn't for me. And it kind of just hit maybe medicine is for me. And I also wonder, my dad is a physician and I always say that impact my decision, but maybe subconsciously it did.
Oh yeah, no, that makes sense. Now, can you tell us why did he leave or come, leave Ghana or come to New York? What was their rationale, I guess, for coming?
That is a really great question, and shame on me that I never asked that question. I'm let me write that down because definitely remember it and ask him. No, but he came here to do his residency.
Oh, very cool.
He came here with his best friend. They're still best friends to this day. He literally had only $400 in his pocket and slept in the hospital for the first few months until he had enough money to get an apartment. And
that's
so I'm
great.
You could do that. I got to keep on pushing.
Are you serious?
Isn't that
I
crazy?
didn't know that story.
Yep.
That's being driven.
Dedication. Like he
Oh my
wanted it
God.
bad.
It
He
is.
wanted it really bad.
Now, where did you grow up in New York? What borough were you in?
So not a borough. Do you know Yorktown, New York? Most people don't. It's not
No.
where the Battle of Yorktown was. That's Virginia. That's what most people.
Yes. Very cool. So how was growing up there? Like, were there like a lot of other people from Ghana there, or was it?
No, it was actually, so there were not a lot of Black people in general in Yorktown, New York. Not a lot of diversity. So that was definitely very challenging because, I mean, people, there's like stereotypes and assumptions and of what you can and can't do. So I remember a guidance counselor being like, nah, you shouldn't apply to that college. You're probably not going to get into medical school. Like you should do something else.
Wow. This is what year? What year was this?
So this was either my third or fourth year, junior or senior year.
Oh my God.
It was crazy. And even when I got into college, one of my like close friends in my friend group was like, you only got in there because of affirmative action.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Well, I've heard that too. And it's funny how so little can change.
Right.
And it's 2000, whatever, 2000. What year was that? 2008? I don't know.
2000. I graduated 2003. Did I graduate 2003? I graduated high school.
Wow.
Gotcha. Wow. So how was that process of choosing a college, like in the end after you quote unquote got in through affirmative action, I guess?
I know, right? Gosh, you're really taking it back.
The journey's important. The journey's super important.
We're going way back.
Yes, it is.
Yes. I don't even really, I think I spoke with my cousins. My sister was at Columbia, and my family was in New York. So actually, I really wanted to go to Columbia. And my dad actually worked there. He was a physician at Columbia. So if I got in, then my tuition would have been paid for. And so that would have been like, to not have loans, that would be incredible. But I didn't get in to Columbia for medical school or for college.
Yes.
And so that was hard because I think I applied there early decision. And then I think it was my cousin told me, I went to Tufts in Boston, kind of full circle back in Boston. But my cousin was like, yeah, I loved it there. I loved the campus. And so I went to visit. It was, close enough to my family where I could go home and see them, but not close enough where they would like be there every day. And so it felt safe.
Balance. Yeah. Absolutely.
And so I ended up in Boston.
Oh, that's really cool. It's really nice. And
so just a minute to talk about how your dad went from sleeping in the hospital to now being this physician at Columbia. I mean, if you need to be inspired by anyone, the example's right there.
Yeah, that is, and it's, it was kind of like, it was awesome, but then no excuse really worked. Like, oh, I'm asleep today. He's like, no, you're not. Or like, I can't do this. Like, I'm nervous. He's like, you're going to do this and you're going to be great. And so
I was going to ask you, I know he's probably tough on you then, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like no excuses, which helped in a way because, I had to keep pushing no matter what.
Yeah. And he's talking from like experience too. I think that's the difference. Like sometimes people are just talking, and then some people talk, the experience and just like coming from, Africa with $400 and sleeping in a hospital. Our problems are relatively not that big.
Right.
So
that's
now at Tufts, did you kind of decide you were gonna be pre-med at that point?
I did. Yeah. I decided I was going to be pre-med. I think I started bio like my first semester, and I found like my friend group / study group, in my bio class. What was that?
So that's a major key. You got to find the friends who are actually going to study.
Find the study group. That's even like, throughout up until med school. Like you guys know, the study group is like key. Like your support system is key. But yeah, I mean, do you want to hear the whole story pre-med?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
And so, you know, I think the challenge was as we went through each class, like the study group got smaller and smaller. And
As
so
it does.
as it does, but you're kind of
Mhm.
like looking around and you're like, whoa, like, you
Mm-hmm.
know, we started with 8 and now we're at, by the time I graduated, it was just 3 of us. And like,
Wow.
obviously you have to recruit new people, right? Because like,
Yep.
yeah, but it was really interesting. And I remember us, you know, in the first year and like stressing over exams. And I'll never forget this one line that my friend said is, don't study harder, study smarter. And that literally sits
Oh,
in my
yes.
brain like to this day.
Yeah.
But
It's a
yeah,
great pearl.
Great advice. Great advice.
Yeah.
There's too much information, like, you know, and that applies even more to med school too. So like, we'll talk about that when we get there. But that's awesome advice. Now, did you take any time off, or how was the transition from undergrad to med school for you?
yeah. So I took a year off in med school, and actually in college, because I wanted to study abroad, I did orgo over the summer because I wanted to make sure I had time to do a semester abroad. And like the usual pre-med kind of pathway doesn't give you much wiggle room.
No.
And so I spent a semester in Ghana actually, and then
Awesome.
came back, finished my pre-med, took a year off before med school to
Mm-hmm.
do research. And so I did research in New York. I also studied for the MCAT then as well during that time. And then yeah, I worked as a research assistant.
Oh, that's great. That's
Yeah.
so good to be able to have that time to go to Africa for a semester. That's awesome.
Yeah,
What was that? What was that like for you?
yeah. So every time I'd gone there with my family previously, we would always like go to an auntie and an uncle's house and like sit on their couch and drink Fanta. Like I never really could feel the culture and feel like it was my own, you know? And
So
so
true. So true.
yeah,
Yes. That's
it's just so different. And so I was able to like my roommate actually from studying abroad, I'm still friends with to this day. And so when I was in Ghana this summer with my family, like we were hanging out. And so it's nice because I feel like I was able to see Ghana through my own eyes and like kind of make friends and interact with my family, like my extended family without my immediate family there. And so
yes.
it was awesome. I would definitely recommend anybody who is pre-med but wants to study abroad to honestly do it, whether it's for a semester or a year. And if you need to take the classes over the summer, I know people who actually did their pre-med coursework after college. So some of my friends who left the study group actually did it all in like Harvard had a program that was like like a shortened program, and so they
Okay.
all did their pre-med afterwards, and then went to medical school and residency.
Oh,
So
that's
there's
awesome. That's really good. That's really good. It's important to take that time off and actually get to know yourself and everything. So that's
Mhm.
really, wow.
Yeah, and that makes you a stronger physician. You know, the
Totally.
people we've talked to before, you know, in other interviews, they talk about how, you know, any experience you can get outside of the plan set before you to become a doctor often makes you just a better physician, a better, well-rounded person. So, um,
1000%.
So
yeah.
true. Wow.
1000%.
Yeah. That's awesome. So what was your, so I guess at that point, so you start applying to med school and then you're trying to figure out where to go, and like how was that transition for you?
That transition was tricky. I didn't really know what kind of applicant that I would be. And so, again, I wanted to go to Columbia just because of the cost situation.
Oh,
Hmm.
yes.
There again.
Smart.
Um, and so, kind of wrote off Columbia at that point. uh, and I
That
think
turns into fuel, by the way.
what was that?
So that turns into fuel, by the way. The
It
rejection.
turns into fuel. Like, I don't need you guys. Like, you're missing out on me,
There you
actually.
Yes.
go.
You're lost,
Exactly.
There you go.
right? You wish you could have me now, but too late.
Exactly.
Burn. That's what I'm talking about.
That's so real. That's so true. Awesome.
Um, but Yeah, I think I applied broadly, a lot of places on the East Coast because that's where my family was. But you know what? I forgot to mention. So I went to Ghana my junior year, but then actually the summer between junior year and senior year of undergrad, I did a summer program. It was called the SPEP program, Summer Pre-Medical Enrichment Program.
Oh, shout out. I did that too.
Did you do that?
Oh, yes.
I love that.
Oh, yeah. Great program. Where did you do it at?
Oh, I did mine at Cincinnati, which is where I ended up.
Boom.
There you go.
Yours.
That's so good. That's so good. Yeah, I did mine at Case.
Oh,
I ended up
nice.
at Case for med school. So
See, it really makes a difference. It really
huge
impacts
difference. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's funny because my roommate in the program, actually I don't know if she's my roommate in the program, but we were friends in the program. When we started medical school, we were roommates, Domily, Travis.
Yeah.
That program with me, I met her there. And so when we both got into UC, we decided to room together.
Oh, that's so funny. So me and my best friend, same thing. We met at a program and I'm going to med school together. So same.
I love it. These programs really have an impact.
They really do. That's so good. Nice. And so you went to the HBCU, University of Cincinnati.
Saad has been on a world tour of UC
Really?
grads, man. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So you guys are deep.
So much to be proud of. Everyone's just doing their thing, Adjoa, and obviously including yourself. So he calls us the HBCU, and it's hilarious.
We're out here.
Yeah, no, that's so good. So now did you have an interest in internal medicine like in med school, or like how did you get interested in
Actually, my dream was to be a pediatrician. And so like in undergrad, I was actually a child development major. I volunteered in the peds unit during like my junior year, my senior year. When I got to Cincinnati, I'm like, I'm going to be a pediatrician. Part of the reason why I wanted to go to UC was because of the children's hospital.
Awesome children's hospital.
Awesome children's hospital. Cincinnati Children's is amazing. I got there. I had a whole plan. I became a pediatric scholar. I was like, this is my thing. I'm going to take over pediatrics. And then I got to my third year and I was like, whoa, like, do I like pediatrics? I don't really. And so it was really kind of jolting because my whole path up until that point was like geared towards pediatrics. And it was my first rotation. And so I was like, maybe it's just because it's my first one. I don't know. But my second rotation was medicine and I loved it.
What didn't you like about peds, Adjoa?
So child checks are like nails on a chalkboard to me.
I see.
I was like, I love that your kid can walk, skip, and jump, but like I don't really care when they, I don't want to memorize like that they're doing this at 2 and 3 and they're saying 5 words. It just wasn't it for me. And I think another reason why I liked medicine better is because I could bond with the patients. Where peds, you were kind of bonding through their parents. Mm-hmm. And so I couldn't really make that connection like with my patient the same way I could in medicine.
That's great. That's great insight. Once you realize that, it's a wrap.
Yep.
It's a wrap, but then it's also kind of tough because you've like been imagining be a pediatrician. So like trying to like kind of, switch that in your mind is kind of tough sometimes. But like, the quicker you can realize, this might not work out for me, the better you can kind of focus on the next thing that will actually work out for you.
Totally.
It was a pivot.
It was a pivot. I mean, I formally decided in my 4th year, like the first or second rotation of my 4th year, which was kind of late, but it worked out.
That's awesome. So, and did you want to kind of stay in the Midwest for residency, or did you kind of apply all over as well?
So I applied all over, but nowhere that I went could I really see myself there. Like I didn't get that, like, this is it for me until actually my last interview was at the University of Illinois at Chicago. And I remember sitting in their morning report and I was like, I see myself here next year. I was like, this is it. And so I ranked them number 1 and I matched there.
Ooh, major accomplishment.
Yeah.
For sure. So up until this point, you have overcome people, putting stereotypes and just
Mhm.
gonna call a thing, being racist in Yorktown.
Yeah.
You
Mhm.
have put up with making it into Tufts and people saying you shouldn't be there or you're there because of affirmative action.
Mhm.
You dealt with some disappointment in that you wanted to get into Columbia for financial reasons, whatever. You're close to family, whatever.
Mhm.
You just overcoming these hurdles. You're just leaping over them, and you won't stop. How are you doing it? How are you doing it? What did you? How did you pull? You know, where'd you get your strength? And what was the toughest thing you overcame on your
Yeah.
journey thus far?
Yeah. You know, I think the toughest thing that I overcame was myself in a way, right? Because you hear people saying you can't do this, you're not going to do it, and then you start to internalize it. Like, I'm not smart. I can't do it.
Yeah,
I'm not going to
yeah,
make it, right? And so learning to kind of overtalk that voice, I
Yeah.
think was critical, and just keep on going. And I think I was also fortunate that like my family was very supportive. And you remember my dad, he's like, of course you're going to do it. Like
Oh
you're
yeah.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I think that was helpful, but I would say it took me a long time to actually like overcome the, am I good enough, smart enough? Am I going to make it?
Yeah.
Like negativity in my own head. Cause I always remember like in medical school, people would like, not that they would compete, but I would always say like, my only competition is with myself. Like I wasn't really worried about what other people were doing,
Mhm.
but kind of learning to overcome and build that self-confidence, I think definitely took time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a level of maturity that I don't think a lot of people have, especially in medical school,
Mhm.
where it's a very competitive environment,
Yep.
point blank and a period, where
It
people
is.
want to be at the top of the class and they want the highest scores on the test because that's the way we're ranked and that's the way we're looked at in
That's what
so
they're
many
used to.
ways. That's right. So for you to have that level of maturity just to get better within yourself and not worry about the rest, it's hard for us to do that even as adults. So that's great
Yeah.
you were able to do that. So
Yeah.
you got through all that, and now you decided to do a GI fellowship. How did you come to that
Good.
You know,
decision?
So I did a GI rotation in my fourth year of med school at the VA, and I loved it. I thought it was so much fun. They actually allowed me to like hold a scope, and I thought that was so cool. Like,
Shout
whoa,
out to VA. They let you do a lot of things
they
there.
like
Yes, they do.
they were there though. They were also holding the scope. So let's, but
That's awesome.
Um, but so leaving medical school, I knew that I wanted to probably specialize because I like the idea of knowing a lot about one thing
Mhm.
versus knowing like having to know everything about everything.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so
Internal medicine is a very wide field, so yeah, that makes
internal
Absolutely.
sense.
medicine is a very broad field, and internal medicine docs are like so, so, so smart because they just have
Hmm.
to know everything.
They
Yeah.
do.
But in residency, I obviously your intern year, you're just kind of learning how things work. And then my like second year, I really started to kind of try to figure out, do I want to do GI? I was considering cardiology. I actually also really liked hem-onc.
Oh,
Um,
very cool.
and I eventually realized like GI was the one where I'd be on my rotations and I'd come home and be excited to read and learn more. And I also felt like people often said that it was the personalities of the people. Like, could you see these people
Yes,
at
yes,
coffee?
yes.
That's
Yeah,
huge. Yeah.
huge. And the GI people were like making jokes about farts and like all of this ridiculous stuff that because you can only be, you know what I mean? It's like we're dealing with poop and farting and all these other things. I
That's
was like,
true.
these are my people. These are my people. And
Down
they,
to earth and having fun.
yep.
And
And
Yeah.
I think it's like it's a lot more procedure oriented than like I realized like until I finished. I didn't realize how many procedures you guys are doing all the time. So that makes it very cool as well.
yeah, we do a lot. And that's another thing. I feel like I get bored easily, but no day is like the last. Like one day is a procedure day, then clinic, then inpatient. It's a nice mix.
What do you love most about GI?
Honestly, it's just so much fun. Like I love the pathology of the different disorders. I think it's really interesting. I think what's really cool is you can fix things. And
Yeah.
so, if somebody calls us about a patient that's bleeding or they're, in the ICU because they're bleeding so rapidly, and then we can actually go in and like stop that and fix it. And like then
Wait.
the person is discharged. It's like,
Yeah.
Time out, Adjoa. So you don't call IR first? You don't, you're not
no.
like
Whoa,
you don't put in your chart. Does it depend on what time of day it is? Because before 3 p.m. Oh, I'm down. Let's go.
Wow. Loco.
Your note changes after 6 p.m. Call IR. There's a bleed.
So good.
But I had to. I couldn't resist.
Sometimes we do, but that's a side combo. But sometimes we call IR first.
No, we had to work together. And that collab. I remember GI at MGH, and the department was highly respected. Oh my God. GI at MGH did everything. I mean, I remember rendezvous procedures. And for those who don't know, where IR and GI get together to open up someone's biliary system, and you do wonderful things for folks who are in, terminal situations. So,
rendezvous procedures. That sounds very cool.
Yeah, it is fun. It's fun because it works, and working with GI, the collaborative effort we can have with them. I have a whole lot of respect for you and for GI, and especially the department you work at. So, if you could tell us a little bit about preventative medicine, GI, and what you're doing in the community. I'm so proud to know you, and so proud to have you here now, and you can shed some light in our small arena on what you're doing in the community to help save lives, literally save lives and prevent disease.
Thank you. Yeah. So, the cornerstone of GI is colon cancer screening. And colon cancer is the third most common cancer, second leading cause of cancer death for men and women combined. And in colon cancer, Black individuals, Black men and women, have the highest incidence or rates of new cases of colon cancer and highest rates of death from colon cancer. And so for me, that's unacceptable. And I want to do my part in changing that. And so I'm doing work now in the community to figure out ways to, number one, increase awareness around colorectal cancer screening, that people should be screened, what it means to be screened, understanding the different screening test options, because I think there's a lot of stigma and a lot of misinformation, and just really making sure that we're getting out there, spreading the word, but then also with research that I'm, kind of working with community health centers that take care of a large share of racial and ethnic minorities, to make sure that, we're working with their workflows and their clinic processes to figure out ways to increase their screening rates. And so that's kind of, some of the work that I'm doing. Two of the health centers that I work with are over 80% Black, both of them. And so really working on the ground to make an impact on colorectal cancer screening.
That's important. That's cool.
Wonderful. Hats off to you. How does that, and I could imagine that motivates you on a day-to-day just to keep doing what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like fuel, helping others and addressing a need that affects so many people. It's just like the fuel to keep going. Even though, the compensation may be nothing, maybe your free time, but man, putting in that extra effort, it goes a long way. So absolutely. I think for anybody who's applying and trying, working in medicine or applying and wants to get in, if you devote that time and you're having a low point and you're feeling discouraged, just go out there and address some needs that need to be met, and that'll keep you moving. That'll keep you going.
Absolutely.
And around those lines, sometimes like our fellows and trainees are trying to figure out what they want to do, and they're like, ask me about my path. And I tell them, like, I'm actually mostly a researcher. I do research and clinical, but I'm mostly a researcher. But in terms of, I tell them it's important to think about your impact, right? And so what drives me is like the impact that I want to have. And then I think about like, what is my avenue to reach that impact? And so for me, it's through research and advocacy. But I think it's important first to figure out what drives you, and then think about, what kind of practice will get you there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's how you got to do it. That's exactly right. And I was going to say, just to touch on the colon cancer screening thing. I mean, it kind of hit home like a few years ago when Chadwick Boseman passed away. He was 42, maybe.
Yeah.
And
Young man.
and he had been sick for a while too. So I mean, that screening is real. I mean, this is a young black male basically. Career.
And more black people, but people in general are getting diagnosed at younger and younger ages. And so, we meaning the USPSDF, the national guidelines, reduce the screening age to 45. But I think it's important for people to know that there's more than, one way to screen for colon cancer. People think mostly about colonoscopy, but, a lot of people don't want to have a colonoscopy, but there's tests out there that are just as good that, can be done at home. And that's kind of the message that I want to get out to people as well.
Can you describe those tests just so people can know that these are not invasive tests?
Yeah, these are non-invasive stool-based tests. So one is a fecal immunohistochemical test. It's a test that you talk with your doctor about screening. Then they give you a kit. You do a stool sample at home, and then you drop it back off at the lab. There's another test. I don't know if we can say trade names, so I'll just say it's Fit DNA. You've probably seen the commercials out there for it. It was recently on SNL. And so that's another stool-based test. And they actually are like a pretty well-oiled machine because they have like a whole patient navigation system that they manage on their own. They manage the shipping of the kits and all of this stuff. And that test can be done every 3 years, whereas the FIT test is every 1 year. And then a colonoscopy, if it's negative, is every 10 years.
Yeah.
I think if any of those other tests are positive, though, it ends up being a colonoscopy. So it's important to let people know that ahead of time.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great.
It is. Don't be afraid of the testing,
Don't be afraid of the test.
So you can prevent horrible disease. And you're so right. I see younger patients all the time, not to strike fear in anyone, but you see disease in younger and younger people all the time. So but you have those tests that help catch things early and get rid of it.
And if there's ever any symptoms, don't ignore them. Just talk with your doctor and get screened early, even if you're not screening age. But one other plug I want to put out there is actually around the time that Chadwick Boseman passed, a group of us, of Black GIs, we formed this organization called the Association of Black Gastroenterologists and Hepatologists. And so we're currently, doing a lot of work in the community, kind of getting the word out about screening. We're actually doing a program tomorrow evening, and we're doing some programming in Chicago for the community around our national conference as well. And so, just getting the word out, getting people screened, but also like mentoring, sponsorship, thinking about the future of GI as well, who's going to continue the work. Those are kind of, that's more so what our mission is.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, you guys have a website or a social media?
We do. It's blackandgastro.org.
Black and Gastro. That's awesome.
Yeah. And we have some cool swag, some colon cancer t-shirts. I have one, it says preventable, treatable, and beatable, which colon cancer is, but a lot of cool swag as well.
Oh, that's awesome.
I've seen your presence on Twitter and I love it. I love it. Yeah. So where's Adjoa going to be in 10 years?
Ooh, that is a big question. That is a great question. I'm honestly still figuring it out.
Yeah.
I love where I'm at right now. I love what I'm doing right now. It's all about what the impact is. And so I'm kind of just going to wait and see. I know in 5 years, I'll definitely still be doing what I'm doing, but in 10, who knows? I honestly don't have the answer to that question.
That's all right. You're figuring it out. And
all of us are, yes.
Yeah, we sure are.
But also, as one more, I know we're, getting towards the end, but just for anybody listening, like your path, like we've talked about, your path changes. If you asked me 5 years ago if I would be doing what I'm doing right now, I would have been like, you're crazy.
Yeah.
And so just be open. Yeah, just be open. You never know.
Oh, that's awesome. So I guess in that regard, so what would you tell someone who's like, in med school or in undergrad trying to like figure it out, trying to get through? Like, what would you tell them as advice?
Yeah, just keep pushing. Think about it one assignment, one test at a time. You're going to get through it. If anybody tells you you can't do it, you absolutely can. Keep your support near you, the people who keep you going. Get a study group, because those people will push you through as well. When you feel like you can't do it, they'll tell you in that room the night before the test, yes, you can.
Yeah.
And just keep on going and don't be discouraged. Like, you'll get there, and there really is a light at the end of the tunnel. I didn't think there was, but there really is one.
Oh, that's major. I love it.
Yeah, that's great.
It's great advice. We really appreciate you making the time for us today. Yeah. This was awesome.
Like, Dr. Anyane-Yeboa dropping gems.
Oh, yeah, we out here learning.
I love it.
I love it. Thank you guys so much for listening. And till next time, stay low and keep firing.
Please subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes or wherever you get your pods.